Hello and welcome to Sean's Little Tip. So now that I'm saying that out loud, it doesn't really sound as good as it did in my head, but it's a working title and we'll figure it out later. Today we are going to be talking about adding depth to your photos in post. Some say it's cheating. Some say it's your art, do with it what you want. I'm on the wagon of just do whatever you want to create the vision that you see in your mind, Bart's. So without further ado, we're going to jump into Photoshop, the editor of choice for me, and see how to do this and, get your Instagram game just popping. Okay, so now that you got the photo of your choice into Photoshop, this is the one I'm using. I like close-up kind of macro photography when I use this kind of technique. You can really use it in any photography that you want, say it portrait, landscape, or even industrial. It all kind of depends on the elements you use. Now, this is the element I'm using is a nice little green leaf here. I chose this one because the colors are relatively close to my edited image. Now, it won't be that hard to color correct to match, but you can really use anything you want. Just make sure it's a nice, clean image. You don't want the little pixelated edge. It kind of ends up being a little crappy. You want to make it look as natural and real as possible. So whatever you are using, just find the best quality you can. That's kind of my rule of thumb. Now, go ahead and move it into position. Now, I'm going to be trying to cover up some of this in the background here, because to me, it kind of pulls your eye away from the in focus kind of cool low depth of field area over here. So I'm actually going to be trying to use these points to draw the eye back into the shot a bit. The trick to getting this to look the best is to not overdo it. Now, you don't want to have a big old leaf in your shot like this. It doesn't look very natural. You probably wouldn't have taken a shot with a leaf in the way like this. So you're going to actually go ahead and throw it up to the side and just rough set it. You don't need to get it exact right now. Just get it to the area that you think you're going to like it in, and go ahead up to filter, down to blur. And I use Gaussian blur, however you want to pronounce that. I don't think anybody really knows. Go ahead and hit that. Now it's going to be blurred a lot for me because that's the last blur that I applied. The main thing you want to do here is try to match the blur here to the other blurs that you have in shot. Or if you don't have other blurs in shot, make it look natural. Now, you don't want to do something like this. That doesn't look very good. It's a little too little blur. And you also don't want to do something like this, because then it just kind of disappears. Unless that's the look you're going for. It looks kind of cool. It's like a little green gradient. But you want to kind of be able to tell what it is. Like these are, you can tell they're leaves for the most part. That's a little blurred to me. I kind of keep it around that range, kind of the 90-ish range. 92.7. Perfect. Now, once you have it like this, you can do some further adjustments if needed. Now you're going to get this little pop-up. It's basically saying it's going to unapply the blur layer until you get your transformation. And once you hit enter, it pops it back on. So all I'm trying to do is get a little bit of the leaf in there. I don't want, like I said, you don't want this. Looks pretty shit if you ask me. But just a little bit up in the corner. Now you're probably thinking that's a little much of a sore thumb, and you'd be right. So the next thing you want to do is click whatever PNG layer that you're using, head up to adjustments. Now, if you don't have the adjustments tab here, you can go up to image and adjustments, and it does the same thing. I like to use curves. You can use anything else you like. You can kind of get the same look through exposure or levels. Basically, all you're trying to do is match the lighting to the rest of the scene, because this looks way too bright and green. But first things first, before you do any adjustments, you want to right click on the curves and do create clipping mask. Now what that's going to do, you can kind of see the arrow here, is it's only going to affect the layer underneath it, which happens to be our ivy layer. So you can kind of see it only only does application to that layer. Otherwise, if you don't have the clipping mask, it applies to the whole layer and it's not going to look great. So all we're going to do is some basic adjustments to kind of get it to match roughly to the lighting of the rest of the leaves. So I'm trying to match the lighting to these guys. Now it's still a little too saturated on my end. So all I have to do is do another adjustment and hue and saturation. And I just like to desaturate it. I like a very moody feel to my image. Now that already looks like it's part of the image. You might need to do a little bit of a shift to it's a little more blue, a little less saturation there. So now it looks like it's way more part of the image. Now it can be a little imperfect. It doesn't have to match exactly to the rest. That's how nature do, you know, it's not exactly the same. Oh, and the hue and saturation, after me telling you all this stuff, is applying to the whole image. So you want to create a clipping mask of that by right-clicking that image and create clipping mask. Now it's actually going to look a lot better. And now, yeah, so that matches pretty close. No one's going to call you out on that bullshit because it looks like it's part of the image. So now you can do any further adjustments that you want. You know, maybe you do want it a little bit more in shot, or you want to rotate it, you know, just a wee bit. Whatever you want. You know, it's your art, it's your photo. This is just how I like to do it. I don't like to overdo it. So that's one method of doing this, kind of adding more depth to a shot. And you can do this even if you don't have these elements. Like these are leaves that were already in shot. If you just had this moss shot without the leaves and just wanted to add this is going to be a great way to add a nice low depth of field to your shot. And I think that makes the image look a lot better. One of the other things that I like to do when doing this kind of shot is add a little bit of color to the image. There's a lot of green, but I want to kind of add a little bit of this orange back into the shot. And a way for me to do that, and you can do this instead of finding a PNG if you don't want to go out and find a cool, you know, leafy PNG or grass PNG or whatever you want to add into your shot. Something else I like to do, I'm going to actually hide this layer for now, is create a new layer. You can come down to this little turning page right here and hit a new layer, throw that on top, and make sure it's not being a clipping mask. So just go up and right click, release clipping mask, and take your brush tool. You can really use anything. I like to use the soft brush, not that big, of course, and do something that's kind of random in your shot that makes it look kind of nature-y. I guess that's kind of nature-y. Do whatever you want. It's your photo. If you want to do some like nice, cool, thin lines in here, you know, make it kind of a unique shape, if you will. And from there, you're going to do the same thing. Go up to filter, blur, Gaussian blur, and do the same blur. It's going to keep your last selection and move this into shot however you want. Something like that looks kind of cool. And now what I'm going to do is actually change the transfer layer to something like soft light. You know what? Yeah, soft light looks good. So that adds a nice little kind of blur layer to your image, and it adds a little splash of color into the rest of it. Now, if you bring in that leaf again, you can probably even take this and maybe drop the opacity, make it something like that. And that makes it look a little bit more natural. If you don't like the soft light look, even just dropping the opacity a little bit on that guy makes it look kind of nice. And I usually try to pick a color that's kind of already represented in the image, but you can go ahead and pick whatever shot you want, or whatever color. I keep saying shot, whatever color you want. So this is actually my final version of this photo. As you can see, I tweaked a few more things, re-edited a little bit to make it something that is uniquely me. And that's the main thing. You just want it to be your vision. So there you have it. A nice little easy trick just to add a little extra to your photos. Now, if you do use this tutorial and you found it helpful, go ahead and leave a like, subscribe, do the normal thing that every single person asks you for. Also, I'd like to see what you do with these photos. If you actually took this technique, you probably already knew how to do it, but I want to see what you did. I am on Instagram at Sean_Treadway. Tag me. I want to see what you done. What you done? What you did. Until next time, we'll see ya.